Princess Elena walked through the marble corridors of Astoria Palace with her usual grace, her silk gown rustling softly against the polished floors. At 19 years old, she had always believed in the goodness of her family and the loyalty of those who served the crown. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting golden patterns across the tapestries that told stories of her ancestors' noble deeds. Everything seemed perfect in her world, just as it had always been. But perfection, Elena would soon learn, was often nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. She was heading to the library when she noticed something unusual. Lady Margaret, her stepmother's closest advisor, was whispering urgently with Commander Aldrich near the servants' staircase. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they saw her approaching. Lady Margaret's smile seemed forced as she curtsied deeply. "Your Highness," Lady Margaret said, her voice smooth as honey. "How lovely to see you this morning. I trust you slept well?" Elena nodded politely, but something in the woman's eyes made her uncomfortable. There was a coldness there that she had never noticed before, like looking into the depths of a winter lake. Commander Aldrich, usually so warm and friendly, barely met her gaze before excusing himself with military precision. The interaction left Elena feeling unsettled as she continued to the library. She tried to focus on her studies, reading about the history of diplomatic relations between Astoria and neighboring kingdoms. But her mind kept drifting back to that strange moment in the corridor. Why had they stopped talking so suddenly? What could they possibly need to discuss in secret? Throughout the day, Elena began noticing other peculiar things. Servants who usually greeted her cheerfully now seemed nervous in her presence. Several times, she caught glimpses of people having hushed conversations that ended the moment they realized she was near. It was as if an invisible wall had suddenly appeared between her and the people she had known all her life. That evening at dinner, Elena sat across from her stepmother, Queen Victoria, who had married her father 3 years after her mother's death. The queen was beautiful and elegant, with sharp intelligence in her emerald eyes. She had always been kind to Elena, though their relationship remained somewhat formal. "Elena, darling," Queen Victoria said, cutting her roasted lamb with precise movements. "I've been thinking about your upcoming 20th birthday celebration. Perhaps we should discuss the guest list soon." Elena nodded absently, still thinking about the day's strange events. "Of course, stepmother. Though I wonder if we might keep it relatively small this year." Queen Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Small? But this is an important milestone, my dear. The people expect a grand celebration for their princess." There was something in her tone that made Elena look up sharply. For just a moment, she thought she saw a flash of something calculating in her stepmother's expression, but it disappeared so quickly she wondered if she had imagined it. After dinner, Elena decided to take a walk in the palace gardens. The night air was cool and filled with the scent of jasmine and roses. She followed the winding paths she had known since childhood, seeking the peace that nature had always provided her. But even here, among the familiar flowers and fountains, she felt like she was being watched. She was about to return to the palace when she heard voices coming from the small pavilion near the rose garden. Hidden behind a large oak tree, Elena recognized her stepmother's voice speaking with someone in low, urgent tones. "The timing must be perfect," Queen Victoria was saying. "The birthday celebration provides the ideal opportunity. Once it's done, there will be no going back." Elena's heart began to race. She pressed herself closer to the tree, straining to hear more. But the other voice was too quiet to make out clearly. All she could determine was that it belonged to a man. "And you're certain about the loyalty of the guards?" the man asked. "Most of them, yes," Queen Victoria replied. "Commander Aldrich has been persuaded to see things our way. The others will follow orders without question when the time comes." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. What were they planning? And why did it involve her birthday celebration? She wanted to hear more, but a branch cracked under her foot, and the conversation stopped immediately. "What was that?" the man's voice carried clearly now. Elena didn't wait to find out if they would investigate. She lifted the hem of her gown and ran as quietly as she could back toward the palace, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone in the kingdom could hear it. She slipped through a side entrance and made it to her chambers without being seen, but sleep was impossible that night. As she lay in her bed staring at the ornate ceiling, Elena's mind raced with possibilities. None of them were good. She had always trusted Queen Victoria, had been grateful for her presence after her mother's death. But now, doubt crept into her heart like poison. The next morning brought new worries. At breakfast, Elena noticed that several of the longtime servants were missing. When she asked Mrs. Pemberton, the head housekeeper, about their absence, the woman's face went pale. "They've been reassigned, Your Highness," Mrs. Pemberton said carefully. Queen Victoria felt it was time for some changes in the household staff. Elena knew Mrs. Pemberton well enough to recognize when she was frightened. The older woman had served the royal family for over 30 years and had never shown fear of anything before. Now her hands trembled slightly as she poured Elena's tea. "Reassigned where?" Elena pressed gently. I'm not sure, Your Highness. Perhaps you should ask Her Majesty directly." But when Elena tried to find Queen Victoria later that morning, she was told that her stepmother was in meetings all day and couldn't be disturbed. This had never happened before. Elena had always been welcome in her stepmother's presence, encouraged to participate in the running of the kingdom as part of her royal education. Feeling increasingly isolated, Elena decided to seek out someone she could trust completely. She made her way to the palace chapel, where Father Benedict, the royal chaplain, would be preparing for the midday service. The old priest had baptized Elena as a baby and had been her spiritual advisor throughout her life. She found him arranging flowers on the altar, his weathered hands gentle with the delicate blooms. When he saw her, his face lit up with genuine warmth, the first she had seen in 2 days. "Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly, "how wonderful to see you. You look troubled, my child. Is there something weighing on your heart?" Elena glanced around the empty chapel before speaking. "Father Benedict, have you noticed anything different about the palace lately? About the people?" The priest's expression grew serious. He set down the flowers and guided Elena to a pew near the back of the chapel, away from prying eyes and ears. "I have noticed some changes," he admitted quietly. "Several of the servants have come to me seeking comfort. They speak of feeling afraid, though they won't say why. And there have been visitors to the palace. Men I don't recognize, meeting with Queen Victoria at odd hours." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of men? I cannot be certain. But they don't dress like diplomats or nobles from neighboring kingdoms. They have the look of men who are accustomed to doing things that decent people would rather not think about." The implications of his words hit Elena like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the wooden pew, her knuckles white with tension. "Father, what should I do? I overheard something last night. Something about my birthday celebration, and perfect timing. I think Queen Victoria is planning something terrible, but I don't know what or why." Father Benedict was quiet for a long moment, his eyes closed in prayer or deep thought. When he opened them, Elena saw both sadness and determination there. "You must be very careful, Your Highness. If your suspicions are correct, then you are in great danger. But you are not alone. There are still people in this palace who remember their true loyalty, to you and to your father's memory." "Oh," Elena whispered urgently. "Who can I trust?" "Captain Marcus of the Palace Guard, for one. He served your father faithfully for 15 years and has always been suspicious of the changes happening under Queen Victoria's rule. And there are others, servants, minor nobles, even some of the newer guards who haven't been influenced." Elena felt a small spark of hope. "Will you speak with Captain Marcus for me? Arrange a meeting somewhere private?" "Of course, my child. But you must promise me that you'll be extremely cautious. Trust no one completely except those I specifically recommend. And whatever you do, don't let Queen Victoria know of your suspicions." As Elena left the chapel, her mind was clearer than it had been in days. She had allies, people who would help her uncover the truth. But she also understood now that she was walking a very dangerous path. One wrong step could mean not just the end of her reign as future queen, but possibly the end of her life. The afternoon passed slowly as Elena tried to maintain her normal routine while her thoughts churned with plans and possibilities. She attended her French lesson with Madame Dubois, practiced piano in the music room, and reviewed correspondence with her secretary. But all the while, she was studying the faces around her, trying to determine who might be friend or foe. That evening, a note was slipped under her door while she was at dinner. Written in Father Benedict's careful handwriting, it simply said, "Midnight, Library, East Alcove behind the astronomy texts." Elena's hands shook slightly as she folded the note and slipped it into her dress pocket. In just a few hours, she would begin her first steps toward uncovering the truth about whatever conspiracy was brewing in her own home. She had no idea how dangerous that path would prove to be, or how much her life was about to change forever. The palace clock struck 11:30 as Elena made her way through the darkened corridors toward the library. She had dismissed her lady's maid early, claiming a headache, and now moved through her ancestral home like a shadow. Every creak of the floorboard seemed impossibly loud in the silence, and she found herself jumping at the smallest sounds. The library was one of Elena's favorite rooms in the palace, filled with thousands of volumes collected by generations of her family. During the day, sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the leather-bound treasures that lined the walls from floor to ceiling. But at midnight, with only moonlight filtering through the glass, the familiar space felt foreign and full of secrets. Elena made her way to the East Alcove, where astronomy and navigation texts were kept. These were books her father had loved, spending hours here teaching her about the stars and their patterns. The memory brought both comfort and sadness as she waited in the shadows. She didn't have to wait long. Captain Marcus appeared silently from behind one of the tall bookcases, moving with the practiced stealth of a professional soldier. He was a man in his early 40s, with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. Elena had known him all her life, and he had always treated her with the perfect balance of respect for her position and genuine affection. "Your Highness," he whispered, bowing slightly. "Father Benedict told me you needed to speak with me urgently." Elena felt relief wash over her at seeing his familiar face. "Captain Marcus, thank you for coming. I hardly know where to begin, but I believe Queen Victoria is planning something against me. I overheard a conversation in the gardens, and there have been so many strange things happening lately." Captain Marcus nodded grimly. "I was afraid this day would come. Your Highness, what I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear, but you need to know the truth about what's been happening in your own palace." He glanced around to ensure they were truly alone before continuing. "Queen Victoria has been systematically replacing loyal servants and guards with her own people for the past 6 months. Those who ask too many questions or show resistance are being transferred to remote positions or dismissed entirely under false pretenses." Elena felt her stomach clench with fear and betrayal. But why? What could she possibly gain? "Power," Captain Marcus said simply. "True power over the kingdom. Your Highness, there are documents hidden in the royal records that suggest Queen Victoria was not born to nobility as she claims. Her marriage to your father appears to have been part of a carefully orchestrated plan." The words hit Elena like physical blows. "That's impossible. Father loved her. She made him happy after mother died. Your father was grieving and lonely," Captain Marcus said gently. "He was vulnerable to someone who knew exactly how to present herself as the perfect companion. But I've been investigating, quietly and carefully. Queen Victoria's past is a mystery that becomes more troubling the deeper you dig." Elena sank into a nearby chair, her legs suddenly too weak to support her. "The conversation I overheard. She mentioned my birthday celebration and perfect timing. What do you think she's planning?" Captain Marcus's expression darkened. "I believe she intends to eliminate you during the celebration when the palace will be full of guests and confusion. It would be easy to make it appear as an accident or the work of foreign assassins. With you gone, she would rule as regent until she could consolidate enough power to claim the throne permanently." "But that's treason," Elena whispered. "Murder. How could she think she could get away with it?" "She's been very clever," Captain Marcus admitted. "She's cultivated relationships with several neighboring kingdoms that would benefit from a weaker Astoria. She's also been quietly accumulating blackmail material on many of our own nobles. Fear is a powerful motivator for compliance." Elena felt overwhelmed by the scope of what she was hearing. Her stepmother, the woman who had tucked her in at night when she was younger, was planning to have her killed. It seemed impossible, like something from a nightmare. "How many people know about this?" she asked. "Not many," Captain Marcus replied. "The conspiracy involves perhaps a dozen key players, but most of the palace staff and guards are simply following orders without understanding the bigger picture. That works in our favor. We can potentially turn many of them back to your side once they understand what's really happening." And how many people can we trust completely? Captain Marcus considered carefully. Myself, Father Benedict, about 6 of the older guards who served your father, Mrs. Pemberton the housekeeper, and perhaps 3 or 4 of the senior servants. There may be others, but we need to be extremely careful about who we approach. Elena stood up, pacing to the window and looking out at the moonlit gardens where she had overheard that fateful conversation. What do you think we should do? We need evidence, Captain Marcus said firmly. Right now we have suspicions and overheard conversations, but nothing that would convince the Royal Council or foreign allies that Queen Victoria is a threat. We need to find concrete proof of her plans. Where would such evidence be kept? Most likely in her private chambers or her personal study. Both are heavily guarded, but Captain Marcus paused, considering. There might be another way. Commander Aldrich, despite his apparent cooperation with Queen Victoria, might not be as committed to her cause as she believes. Elena turned from the window, hope flickering in her chest. You think he might help us? I think he might be cooperating out of fear rather than conviction. He has a wife and young daughter in the capital. If Queen Victoria threatened them, Captain Marcus shrugged. A good man can be forced to make terrible choices to protect those he loves. Could you approach him? Perhaps, but it would be extremely dangerous. If I'm wrong about his motivations, it could expose our entire effort and put you in immediate danger. Elena thought about this for several minutes, weighing the risks against the potential benefits. Finally, she made her decision. I think we need to take that risk, but not you. If Commander Aldrich reports the conversation, Queen Victoria would have you executed immediately. I need to approach him myself. Absolutely not, Captain Marcus said firmly. Your Highness, with respect, that would be suicide. You're the primary target here. Exposing yourself directly to someone who might be compromised would be incredibly foolish. But think about it, Elena insisted. If Aldrich is being coerced, then seeing me approach him personally, showing that I trust him enough to put my life in his hands, might be exactly what convinces him to switch sides. And if he's truly loyal to Queen Victoria, she took a deep breath. Well, then I'll know for certain that I can't trust him. Captain Marcus looked deeply troubled. Your Highness, I cannot recommend this course of action. There has to be another way. Perhaps there is, Elena said thoughtfully. What if I don't approach him directly? What if I create a situation where he has to choose sides without knowing it's a test? She began pacing again, her mind working quickly. What if I pretend to confide in Queen Victoria about having suspicions about someone else, someone completely innocent? If Aldrich is truly working with her, he'll be involved in whatever action she takes against that person. But if he's being coerced, he might find a way to warn the innocent party or sabotage the plan. Captain Marcus considered this idea. It's still extremely dangerous. If Queen Victoria suspects you know anything about her real plans, she might accelerate her timeline and act immediately. But she can't, Elena pointed out. Her plan depends on the birthday celebration for maximum effect. If she acts before then, it will look suspicious. She needs the crowd and confusion of the party to make my death seem accidental or like foreign interference. Unless she decides that the risk of discovery is greater than the benefit of waiting, Captain Marcus warned. Your Highness, conspirators become increasingly paranoid as their plans near fruition. Any sign that you suspect something could trigger immediate action. Elena felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. Every option carried enormous risks, but doing nothing guaranteed that Queen Victoria's plan would succeed. How long do we have? She asked. Your birthday celebration is in 8 days, Captain Marcus replied. But I suspect she'll want to act a day or two before that, during the preparations when the palace is chaotic, but not yet full of witnesses. Then we have perhaps 6 days to gather evidence and build our counter-conspiracy. Elena straightened her shoulders, feeling some of her mother's legendary strength flowing through her veins. Captain Marcus, I need you to identify every person in the palace we might be able to trust. Don't approach them yet, but be prepared to do so quickly when the time comes. What will you do? Elena smiled grimly. I'm going to be the perfect unsuspecting princess. I'll plan my birthday celebration with enthusiasm, discuss guest lists and entertainment with Queen Victoria, and act completely normal. But I'll also be watching and listening more carefully than I ever have before. And the test with Commander Aldrich? I'll think about it. If I can devise a way to test his loyalty without putting innocent people at serious risk, I'll try it. Otherwise, we'll have to find another way to determine who we can trust. Captain Marcus bowed deeply. Your Highness, I pledge my life to protecting you and preserving your rightful place on the throne. Your father would be proud of the courage you're showing. As Elena made her way back to her chambers, she reflected on how much her life had changed in just 3 days. She had gone from being a sheltered princess who believed in the goodness of everyone around her, to someone who had to question every smile, every gesture, every word spoken in her presence. But she had also discovered reserves of strength and determination she hadn't known she possessed. Her mother had died when Elena was young, but the stories of Queen Isabella's intelligence, courage, and fierce protection of Astoria lived on in palace legend. Elena had always wondered if she would be worthy of such a legacy. Now, facing the greatest challenge of her life, she was beginning to believe that perhaps she was her mother's daughter after all. The next few days would test that belief in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The morning sun cast long shadows across Elena's chambers as she prepared for what might be the most important performance of her life. For 3 days, she had played the role of the oblivious princess perfectly, discussing flower arrangements and guest accommodations with Queen Victoria, while internally cataloging every suspicious glance, every hesitated response, every moment when her stepmother's mask seemed to slip. The test she had devised for Commander Aldrich was simple, but potentially revealing. She had decided to confide in Queen Victoria about concerns regarding Thomas, one of the younger stable masters who had recently been asking questions about the unusual activity in the palace. Thomas was innocent of any wrongdoing, but his natural curiosity had made him notice the same changes that had alerted Elena. Elena found Queen Victoria in her private study, surrounded by correspondence and official documents. The room was elegant but somehow cold, decorated in shades of blue and silver that complemented her stepmother's fair coloring, but lacked the warmth that had characterized Elena's mother's personal spaces. Stepmother, Elena began, allowing a note of uncertainty to color her voice. I wondered if I might speak with you about something that's been troubling me. Queen Victoria looked up from her papers, and Elena caught a flash of alertness in her green eyes before the familiar mask of concern slipped into place. Of course, darling. What's concerning you? Elena settled into a chair across from the ornate desk, wrapping her arms around herself as if seeking comfort. It's probably nothing, but I've noticed that Thomas from the stables has been asking questions. About why certain servants have been transferred, about the new guards, about meetings you've been having with visitors. Queen Victoria's expression didn't change, but Elena noticed that her stepmother's fingers tightened slightly on the pen she was holding. Thomas is asking these questions? He approached me yesterday while I was visiting Starlight, Elena continued, referring to her favorite horse. He seemed worried about some of the changes happening around the palace. I told him not to concern himself with matters above his station, but she let her voice trail off uncertainly. But what, dear? I'm worried he might be gathering information to sell to foreign agents or rival nobles. You know how valuable palace gossip can be to our enemies. Should I be concerned? Queen Victoria set down her pen and leaned back in her chair, studying Elena's face carefully. You were right to bring this to my attention. We cannot afford to have disloyal servants spreading rumors or sharing sensitive information, especially with your birthday celebration approaching. Elena felt her heart sink. Queen Victoria's response was exactly what she had feared: immediate suspicion and willingness to act against an innocent person. What do you think we should do? Elena asked, hating herself for the question but needing to see how far her stepmother would go. Leave Thomas to me, Queen Victoria said smoothly. I'll have Commander Aldrich look into his activities and background more thoroughly. If he proves to be a security risk, we'll deal with him appropriately. Elena nodded, as if reassured, while inside she felt sick. She had just signed Thomas's death warrant based on nothing more than his natural curiosity. The guilt was almost overwhelming, but she reminded herself that this knowledge might be the key to saving not just Thomas, but herself and potentially the entire kingdom. Thank you, stepmother. I feel much better knowing you'll handle the situation. That's what I'm here for, darling. Queen Victoria smiled, but the warmth didn't reach her eyes. Now, shall we discuss the final arrangements for your celebration? I have some wonderful surprises planned. Elena spent the next hour discussing menu options and entertainment, all while her mind raced with plans to somehow protect Thomas from the consequences of her necessary deception. She needed to warn Captain Marcus immediately and find a way to get Thomas away from the palace before Commander Aldrich could act. That afternoon, Elena made her way to the chapel under the pretense of private prayer. Father Benedict was there, as she had hoped, preparing for evening vespers. "Father," she whispered urgently after ensuring they were alone, "I need to get a message to Captain Marcus immediately, and I need your help with something that may save an innocent man's life." She quickly explained her test and its results, watching Father Benedict's face grow increasingly grave. "My child," he said sadly, "you've confirmed our worst fears about Queen Victoria. But you've also put young Thomas in terrible danger. I know, and I hate myself for it. But Father, if Commander Aldrich is truly working with Queen Victoria willingly, then Thomas will disappear or have an accident within the next day or two. If Aldrich is being coerced, then maybe he'll find a way to protect Thomas or warn him," Father Benedict finished. "It's a dangerous gamble, but I understand your reasoning. Can you get word to Captain Marcus? We need to be prepared either way." "I'll find a way," Father Benedict promised. "But Elena, you must be extremely careful now. Queen Victoria will be watching you more closely than ever. Any sign that you suspect her true nature could trigger immediate action against you." That evening, Elena dined with Queen Victoria as usual, but the conversation felt different somehow. Her stepmother seemed more attentive, asking more questions about Elena's daily activities, her thoughts about the upcoming celebration, her plans for the future. "You seem distracted lately, darling," Queen Victoria observed as they shared dessert. "Is everything all right? You're not having second thoughts about the birthday celebration, are you?" Elena forced a bright smile. "Not at all. I'm just excited. It feels like such an important milestone, turning 20. I keep thinking about the future, about eventually taking on more responsibilities in governing the kingdom." Something flickered in Queen Victoria's eyes at those words. "Oh, there's no need to worry about such heavy matters yet. You have years before you need to concern yourself with the burdens of rule." "But Father always said that preparation was key to good leadership," Elena replied carefully. "He began involving me in court sessions and diplomatic meetings when I was 16. Your father was perhaps too eager to burden you with adult concerns," Queen Victoria said, her voice carrying a slight edge. "I think it's better for young people to enjoy their youth while they can." Elena nodded as if accepting this wisdom, but internally she noted another piece of evidence. Queen Victoria clearly had no intention of ever allowing Elena to take her rightful place as ruler. The next morning brought the first test of Elena's gamble. She was in the morning room, reading correspondence, when she heard raised voices from the courtyard below. Moving to the window, she saw Commander Aldrich talking urgently with two of his guards near the stables. Elena's heart pounded as she watched the scene unfold. If Aldrich was loyal to Queen Victoria, this would be the beginning of Thomas's arrest or worse. But as she watched, something unexpected happened. Instead of approaching the stables directly, Commander Aldrich sent one of the guards in a different direction entirely. Then, instead of waiting, he walked quickly toward the gardens. Elena realized with a surge of hope that he might be creating a diversion or giving Thomas time to escape. Her suspicion was confirmed an hour later when she saw Thomas leading a horse out of the palace gates, officially carrying a message to a neighboring estate, but clearly fleeing to safety. Commander Aldrich had found a way to warn him and provide him with legitimate cover for leaving the palace. Elena felt a mixture of relief and excitement. She had been right about Aldrich being coerced rather than willingly treacherous. This meant they had a potential ally in a crucial position, someone who could provide inside information about Queen Victoria's plans. But she also realized that her stepmother would soon discover Thomas's disappearance and might become suspicious about how he had learned to flee. Elena needed to be ready for increased scrutiny and possibly accelerated timelines for whatever Queen Victoria was planning. That afternoon, Elena received an unexpected visitor. Lady Margaret knocked on her chamber door, requesting a private audience. Elena's skin crawled at the sight of the woman who she now knew was one of her stepmother's key conspirators, but she maintained her facade of trusting innocence. "Your Highness," Lady Margaret began with her usual false sweetness, "I wanted to discuss some security concerns with you regarding your birthday celebration." Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression merely curious. Security concerns?
Yes, dear.
Queen Victoria is worried that there may be foreign elements planning to disrupt your special day. She thinks it would be wise to make some last-minute changes to the guest list and perhaps the timing of certain events. This was it, Elena realized. Queen Victoria was beginning to accelerate her plans, possibly because Thomas's disappearance had made her nervous about security leaks. What kind of changes? Elena asked. Well, perhaps we should move the main celebration to an earlier time, maybe even tomorrow evening instead of waiting until your actual birthday. And we might want to limit the guest list to only the most trusted nobles and allies.
Elena's mind raced.
A smaller, earlier celebration would actually make it easier for Queen Victoria to control the situation and eliminate Elena without too many witnesses. But if Elena appeared too resistant to the changes, it might trigger immediate action against her. I suppose that makes sense, Elena said slowly, though I am disappointed to change the plans so suddenly. What about all the preparations we've made? Oh, don't worry about that, Lady Margaret smiled. Everything can be adjusted easily. The important thing is your safety, dear. After Lady Margaret left, Elena felt the walls closing in around her. Queen Victoria was moving faster than expected, which meant Elena and her allies had very little time to prepare their own countermeasures. She needed to get word to Captain Marcus immediately, but she also needed to be extremely careful. Any unusual behavior now could prove fatal. As evening approached, Elena realized that tomorrow might be her last day alive unless she could find a way to turn the tables on her stepmother's conspiracy. The innocent princess was about to become a player in the deadliest game of her life. Elena barely slept that night, her mind churning with plans and possibilities. By dawn, she had made several crucial decisions that would either save her life or end it. The accelerated timeline meant she could no longer afford to be cautious. It was time to act boldly or die trying. Her first move came during her morning routine. Instead of waiting for her lady's maid, Elena dismissed her early and used a hidden passage she had discovered as a child to make her way to the kitchens before the palace fully awakened. Mrs. Balls, Pemberton, the head housekeeper, was already there supervising the preparation of breakfast. Mrs. Pemberton, Elena whispered, drawing the older woman aside. I need your help with something that could save both our lives. She had served the royal family for 3 decades and had clearly been waiting for this conversation.
I know about Queen Victoria's plan, Elena continued quickly.
And I know you've suspected something terrible was happening. I need you to gather every servant you trust completely. People who served my father. People who remember their true loyalty. Can you do that? Yes, Your Highness. There are perhaps a dozen of us who have been waiting for someone to tell us what to do. Elena felt a surge of hope. Good. I need you to spread word quietly among the truly loyal servants. Tonight's celebration is when Queen Victoria plans to kill me. We're going to stop her, but I need everyone to be ready to act when the time comes. Mrs. Pemberton's eyes filled with tears of anger and determination. Your Highness, we've all been so frightened, but we didn't know how to help you. Tell us what you need. Elena quickly outlined her plan. It was dangerous and required perfect timing, but it was their only chance. Mrs. Pemberton listened intently, asking sharp questions that showed why she had survived and thrived in palace politics for so many years. Elena's next stop was the chapel, where she found Father Benedict preparing for morning prayers. The conversation was brief but crucial. Father, I need you to send a very specific message to Captain Marcus, she said urgently. Tonight, during the celebration, I'm going to force Queen Victoria to reveal her true intentions in front of witnesses. But I need Marcus and his loyal guards positioned exactly right to protect me when she acts. Father Benedict's face showed deep concern. My child, you're talking about deliberately triggering an assassination attempt. The risk of doing nothing is greater, Elena interrupted. She's moving the timeline up. If I don't act tonight, I may not get another chance. The priest nodded slowly. What do you need me to tell Captain Marcus? Elena gave him detailed instructions about guard positions, timing, and signals. Then she added something that made Father Benedict's eyes widen in surprise. And tell him that Commander Aldrich will be helping us. He proved his true loyalty when he helped Thomas escape yesterday. The rest of the morning was spent in the most difficult performance of Elena's life. She had breakfast with Queen Victoria, discussing the evening's revised plans with apparent enthusiasm, while her stepmother watched her carefully for any sign of suspicion. "I think the smaller guest list is actually better," Elena said brightly as she spread jam on her toast. "More intimate. And moving it to tonight will make it feel more spontaneous and fun." Queen Victoria smiled, but Elena noticed it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm so pleased you understand, darling. These last-minute security concerns are unfortunate, but necessary. Of course. Will Commander Aldrich be handling the security arrangements personally?" "Yes, he'll be supervising everything." Queen Victoria paused. "I do hope you'll stay close to the main reception area during the party. Some of the upper floors and outer courtyards will have limited security coverage." Elena felt a chill at the implication. Queen Victoria was already subtly trying to control her movements, positioning her where the assassination would be easiest to carry out and cover up. "Naturally," Elena replied. "Though I did hope to show some of our guests the rose garden. Father planted those rose bushes for Mother, and they're blooming so beautifully right now." The mention of Elena's mother caused a brief flicker of something. Guilt? Annoyance? To cross Queen Victoria's face. "Perhaps we can arrange a garden tour another time," she said smoothly. "Tonight should focus on celebrating you in the main halls." Elena spent the afternoon in her chambers, supposedly resting for the evening's festivities, but actually making final preparations for what she hoped would be Queen Victoria's downfall rather than her own death. She had chosen her dress carefully, a deep blue gown that had belonged to her mother, with hidden pockets where she could conceal small items. More importantly, it was a dress that would clearly identify her as her father's heir to anyone who might witness the evening's events. As the sun began to set, Elena could hear the sounds of preparation throughout the palace. Servants were arranging flowers, musicians were tuning instruments, and guards were taking their positions. But she knew that beneath the celebratory atmosphere, deadly plans were also being finalized. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting her lady's maid. Instead, Commander Aldrich entered, closing the door carefully behind him. Elena's heart raced. This was either salvation or doom walking into her room. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I need to speak with you about tonight's security arrangements." Elena studied his face, trying to read his intentions. "Of course, Commander. What concerns you?" Aldrich moved closer, lowering his voice even further. "Your Highness, I know that you know about Queen Victoria's plan, about what she intends to do tonight." Elena felt the world tilt around her. Either Aldrich was about to help her or about to ensure she never left this room alive. "I don't know what you mean," she said carefully. "Yes, you do," Aldrich replied firmly. "The test with Thomas was clever. You needed to know if I could be trusted. Well, I helped him escape, and now I'm here to help you." Elena felt a wave of relief so intense she had to sit down. "You're truly on my side?" "I have been from the beginning," Aldrich said grimly. "Queen Victoria has been blackmailing me for months. She has my wife and daughter under constant surveillance, with threats against their lives if I don't cooperate. But I've been feeding information to Captain Marcus when I could, and I've been sabotaging her plans in small ways." "What exactly is she planning for tonight?" Aldrich's expression darkened. "During the toast to your health, someone will shout about foreign assassins. In the confusion, you'll be struck by a crossbow bolt that will appear to come from outside, but will actually be fired by one of her agents positioned in the musician's gallery. I'm supposed to ensure that the guards are looking the wrong way when it happens." Elena felt cold despite the warmth of the evening. "And after I'm dead?" "Queen Victoria will be devastated, of course. She'll declare martial law to protect against foreign threats, assume emergency powers as regent, and slowly consolidate control over the kingdom. Within a year, she'll discover some convenient legal technicality that allows her to claim the throne permanently. How many people are part of the conspiracy?" "Not as many as she believes," Aldrich said. "Lady Margaret, 3 of the newer guards, 2 servants she's bribed, and a handful of minor nobles she's either blackmailed or bought. Most of the palace staff and guards are simply following orders without understanding the bigger picture. Elena stood up, feeling her mother's strength flowing through her. And then tonight, we expose her in front of everyone and end this permanently. Your Highness, the risk, Commander. I've been thinking about this all day. We could try to escape, go into hiding, gather evidence slowly. But Queen Victoria has shown she's willing to accelerate her timeline when threatened. If we don't end this tonight decisively, she'll find another way to kill me and seize power. Aldrich nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Elena outlined her plan, watching his expression grow increasingly amazed and concerned. Your Highness, that's incredibly dangerous. You're essentially betting your life that you can outmaneuver her in front of a room full of people. Commander, she's already betting my life against her ambition. At least this way, I have some control over the outcome. They spent the next hour coordinating timing and signals. When Aldrich left to make his preparations, Elena felt more hopeful than she had in days. She had allies in crucial positions, a clear understanding of the enemy's plan, and a strategy that could expose Queen Victoria's treachery in front of dozens of witnesses. But she also knew that one wrong word, one mistimed action, one betrayal from someone she trusted, would mean her death before she turned 21. As she prepared to leave her chambers for what might be the last time, Elena touched the small portrait of her mother that sat on her dressing table.
Mother,
She whispered,
I hope I can be half as brave as you were.
and I hope that by tomorrow morning, Father's kingdom will be safe again. The sounds of music and laughter were already drifting up from the great hall. Elena's deadly birthday party was about to begin. The great hall had been transformed into a glittering jewel for Elena's birthday celebration. Hundreds of candles cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floors, while garlands of roses and jasmine filled the air with their sweet fragrance. The assembled guests, carefully selected by Queen Victoria for this intimate gathering, sparkled in their finest silks and jewels. Completely unaware that they were about to witness either a princess's murder or a queen's downfall, Elena descended the main staircase with practiced grace, her mother's sapphire necklace catching the candlelight, and her deep blue gown rustling softly against the marble steps. To the assembled nobles, she appeared to be the perfect image of royal beauty and innocence. But beneath her serene exterior, every nerve was alert and ready for the deadly game about to unfold. Queen Victoria stood at the base of the stairs, resplendent in emerald green silk, her smile radiant as she welcomed her stepdaughter to what she believed would be Elena's final celebration. My dear Elena, Queen Victoria said warmly, taking her hands and kissing both cheeks. You look absolutely radiant. Your father would be so proud. Elena smiled back, noting how her stepmother's eyes glittered with anticipation rather than warmth. Thank you, stepmother. This is beautiful. You've outdone yourself. As they moved into the crowd of guests, Elena subtly scanned the room, noting the positions of Captain Marcus and his loyal guards, the location of the musicians' gallery where the assassin waited, and the faces of those she now knew were part of the conspiracy. Lady Margaret stood near the refreshment tables, her false smile particularly bright tonight. The 3 guards loyal to Queen Victoria were positioned strategically around the room, while several minor nobles who had been bought or blackmailed clustered near the main entrance. Commander Aldrich caught her eye from across the room and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Everyone was in position. The first part of the evening proceeded exactly as planned. Elena mingled gracefully with the guests, accepting birthday wishes and compliments while Queen Victoria played the role of the devoted stepmother perfectly. Musicians played softly in the gallery above, and servants circulated with wine and delicate appetizers. But Elena noticed the subtle signs of tension among the conspirators. Lady Margaret checked the ornate clock on the mantelpiece repeatedly. The 3 disloyal guards kept glancing toward the musicians' gallery. Queen Victoria's smile became more forced as the evening progressed. At precisely 9 o'clock, the time Commander Aldrich had warned her the assassination was planned, Elena made her move. Ladies and gentlemen, she called out, her clear voice carrying easily across the hall. Before we continue our celebration, I have something important to share with all of you. Queen Victoria's face went rigid with alarm. This was not part of the planned evening. and Elena could see her stepmother's mind racing to understand what was happening. As many of you know, Elena continued, moving to the center of the room where everyone could see and hear her clearly, my father always taught me that honesty and transparency were the foundations of good rule. Tonight, in the spirit of those teachings, I want to share some concerns that have come to my attention about threats to our kingdom's security. The assembled guests murmured with interest and concern. Queen Victoria stepped forward, her voice carrying a warning edge. Elena, darling, this is hardly the time or place for such serious discussions. Perhaps we should... Actually, stepmother, I think this is the perfect time, Elena said firmly. Because some of the people who pose the greatest threat to our kingdom are in this very room tonight. A shocked silence fell over the gathering. Elena could see Queen Victoria's face going pale as she realized her stepdaughter was no longer the innocent, trusting girl she had been manipulating. You see, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger, I've recently discovered that there are people close to the royal family who have been plotting against the crown. People who have been systematically replacing loyal servants with their own agents, gathering blackmail material on nobles, and planning to seize power through violence and deception. Lady Margaret stepped forward, her voice sharp with false concern. Your Highness, you seem overwrought. Perhaps the excitement of the evening. I'm perfectly clear-headed, Lady Margaret, Elena replied coolly. In fact, I've never seen more clearly. Would you like to know what I overheard in the Rose Garden 5 nights ago? Queen Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. Elena, stop this nonsense immediately. You're embarrassing yourself and distressing our guests. The only person who should be embarrassed is the woman who married my father under false pretenses and has spent the last 3 years planning to murder his daughter and steal his throne. Gasps echoed through the hall as the assembled nobles began to understand what they were witnessing. Several guests stepped back from Queen Victoria, while others moved protectively closer to Elena. That's enough, Queen Victoria snapped, dropping all pretense of maternal concern. Guards! Arrest the princess immediately. She's clearly suffered some kind of mental breakdown and poses a danger to herself and others. This was the moment Elena had been waiting for. She watched as the 3 guards loyal to Queen Victoria moved toward her, while Captain Marcus and his men stepped forward to protect her. The loyal nobles in the room began shouting questions and demands for explanation, while the conspirators tried desperately to control the situation. But Elena wasn't finished yet. Before anyone moves another step, she called out loudly, I think our guests deserve to know about the crossbow aimed at my heart from the musicians' gallery. Every head in the room turned upward, and there, clearly visible to all, was one of Queen Victoria's hired assassins with a crossbow pointed directly at Elena. The man, realizing he had been exposed, panicked and fired wildly into the crowd before trying to flee. The bolt struck harmlessly into a marble pillar, but the sight of an assassin attempting to murder the princess in front of dozens of witnesses was all the evidence anyone needed of Queen Victoria's guilt. Chaos erupted in the great hall. The loyal nobles began shouting for Queen Victoria's arrest, while her conspirators tried desperately to fight their way out of the palace. Lady Margaret drew a concealed dagger and lunged at Elena, only to be tackled by Mrs. Pemberton, who had been positioned nearby for exactly such a possibility. Commander Aldrich's voice rang out above the tumult. In the name of Princess Elena, rightful heir to the throne of Astoria, I place Queen Victoria under arrest for high treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted regicide. Queen Victoria, cornered and exposed, finally dropped all pretense. Her beautiful face twisted with hatred as she screamed at Elena, You stupid child! You have no idea what you've done! This kingdom needs strong leadership, not some naive girl playing at being queen. The kingdom needs honest leadership, Elena replied firmly as Captain Marcus's guards surrounded Queen Victoria, something you've never provided and never could provide. As the conspirators were rounded up and the loyal guests began to understand the full scope of what had been planned, Elena felt a mixture of relief, sadness, and determination. She had survived the deadliest night of her life, but she had also learned that the crown she was destined to wear would be far heavier than she had ever imagined. Father Benedict appeared at her side, his face filled with pride and concern. Your Highness, are you injured? No, Father. Shaken, but not injured. Elena looked around at the chaos slowly being brought under control by the loyal guards. How many people were part of the conspiracy? Fewer than Queen Victoria believed, Commander Aldrich reported as he approached. Most of the people she thought were loyal to her were simply afraid or following orders without understanding the bigger picture. With her arrested and the truth exposed, I expect many of them will be relieved to return to their true loyalty. Elena nodded, then addressed the assembled guests who were still in the Great Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that your evening has been disrupted by these terrible revelations. But I want you to know that the threat to our kingdom's stability has been eliminated. Queen Victoria and her co-conspirators will be tried according to the law, and justice will be served. Lord Pemberton, one of her father's oldest advisors, stepped forward and bowed deeply. Your Highness, if I may speak for all of us present tonight, we are grateful for your courage in exposing this treachery. Your father would indeed be proud of the woman you've become. Over the following hours, as the palace was secured and the conspirators were imprisoned to await trial, Elena finally had time to process what she had lived through. She stood in her father's old study, surrounded by the books and maps he had loved, trying to understand how her life had changed so completely in just 1 week. Captain Marcus knocked on the door and entered at her invitation. Your Highness, the palace is secure. All of Queen Victoria's agents have been identified and arrested. The servants who were coerced have been questioned and released. Commander Aldrich sends his compliments and his request to continue serving as head of your personal guard. Granted, of course, Elena said. And, Captain Marcus, I want you to know that your loyalty and courage saved not just my life, but the future of this kingdom. I won't forget that. The older soldier bowed. It was my honor to serve, Your Highness. Your father chose his heir wisely. As Elena prepared for bed in the early morning hours, she reflected on the price of the crown she would soon officially inherit. The innocent trust she had once felt toward the people around her was gone forever, replaced by a harder wisdom about the nature of power and ambition. But she had also discovered strengths she hadn't known she possessed. Under pressure that would have broken many people, she had found the courage to risk everything for justice and truth. She had earned the loyalty of good people and learned to distinguish between those who served her position and those who served her personally. Most importantly, she had proven to herself that she was worthy of the legacy her parents had left her. The kingdom would face other challenges in the years to come, but it would face them with a queen who understood both the weight of leadership and the price of keeping it. As dawn broke over Astoria Palace, Princess Elena looked out at the kingdom she would soon rule and felt ready for whatever the future might bring. The innocent girl was gone, but in her place stood a young woman who had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than anyone, including herself, had believed possible. The crown would be heavy, but she was strong enough to bear it.